those kids looks like me. And how is my ex-wife became this rich?
She was driven away by her husband, but returned 5 years later with twins for revenge. Distinguished viewers, welcome to Luxury True Life Stories. Please like and subscribe for more amazing real-life luxury stories. Now, let's get into the story. Jessica Elliott grew up in a peaceful coastal town where life moved slowly and neighbors knew each other by name. Her father, Michael Elliott, was a skilled carpenter who built and repaired homes, while her mother, Laura Elliott, worked as the town librarian. Their modest house near the harbor was filled with warmth, books, and the sound of the sea. Watching her father work with wooden structure sparked Jessica's early fascination with buildings, and she soon developed a passion for architecture. As she grew older, Jessica became known for her creativity and determination. She spent many evenings sketching buildings and dreaming about designing structures that could improve communities. Her parents encouraged her ambitions, always reminding her that hard work and honesty would guide her far in life. With their support, Jessica studied architecture and graduated with strong results, ready to begin a career in the city. Leaving her quiet hometown was not easy, but Jessica believed her future awaited beyond the harbor. With hope, determination, and the dreams she had carried since childhood, she moved to the city, unaware that the journey ahead would lead her to love, betrayal, and a life she never expected. The city Jessica moved to was alive with energy, crowded streets, towering buildings, and endless opportunities waiting behind every corner. For Jessica, it was both exciting and intimidating. Unlike the calm rhythm of her coastal hometown, the city moved fast, and everyone seemed to be chasing something bigger. Determined not to fall behind, Jessica began applying for positions at several architectural firms. After weeks of interviews and portfolio reviews, she finally received an opportunity to present her design ideas at a public development event hosted by one of the city's most powerful companies, Coleman Developments. Coleman Developments was owned by the influential Coleman family, known for their massive real estate empire and their ability to transform entire districts of the city. The current face of the company was Daniel Coleman, the ambitious son of billionaire businessman Richard Coleman. Daniel had grown up surrounded by luxury and expectations. From a young age, he was trained to lead the family business and continue the powerful legacy his father had built. Despite his privileged upbringing, Daniel possessed natural intelligence and charisma that made him stand out among the city's elite businessmen. However, behind his confident image was a man constantly trying to prove that he deserved his position. On the evening of the development event, Jessica nervously stood among dozens of architects and designers presenting their ideas. Her proposal focused on creating affordable housing combined with green public spaces, something very different from the luxury developments most companies preferred. As she spoke passionately about community and long-term sustainability, one particular person in the audience listened with unusual interest. Standing near the back of the room, dressed in a dark suit and observing every detail, was Daniel Coleman himself. For the first time that evening, his attention shifted completely toward Jessica Elliott, the quiet architect whose ideas were unlike anything he had heard before. Unknowingly, their first encounter had just begun. Jessica stepped down from the presentation stage with a mixture of relief and uncertainty. Many of the other architects had presented luxurious towers and expensive residential complexes that promised enormous profits, while her design focused on community spaces and affordable housing. She wondered if the executives in the room would even consider such an idea. Still, she reminded herself that she had spoken honestly about what she believed architecture should represent, structures that improved people's lives rather than simply displaying wealth. As the audience slowly dispersed, Jessica gathered her sketches and documents, preparing to leave quietly. Before she could reach the exit, a calm but confident voice stopped her. "Miss Elliott, your presentation was impressive." She turned around to see Daniel Coleman standing in front of her. Up close, his presence felt even more commanding. He carried himself with the quiet authority of someone used to being listened to. Jessica immediately recognized him from business articles and news interviews. Daniel Coleman was one of the youngest and most successful executives in the city. Slightly nervous but determined to remain professional, Jessica thanked him politely. Daniel asked several detailed questions about her design, clearly intrigued by the practicality and creativity of her ideas. What surprised Jessica most was how seriously Daniel considered her proposal. Instead of dismissing her concept as unrealistic, he spoke about the possibility of combining community development with profitable projects. By the end of their conversation, Daniel made a decision that would alter Jessica's future. He offered her a junior architectural position at Coleman Developments so she could work directly with his team on upcoming projects. Jessica was stunned by the opportunity. Just days after arriving in the city, she had been given a chance that many architects waited years to receive. With gratitude and excitement, she accepted the offer, unaware that this professional partnership would soon grow into something far more complicated than either of them expected. Jessica's first weeks at Coleman Developments were intense and demanding. The company operated in a sleek glass tower in the center of the city, where employees moved quickly through hallways carrying blueprints, contracts, and project proposals. For Jessica, the environment was very different from the quiet design studios she had worked in before. Yet her dedication and creativity quickly caught the attention of her colleagues. She spent long hours studying project plans, adjusting designs, and learning the company's methods. Her ideas about combining modern architecture with community spaces began gaining interest among the design teams. Daniel Coleman frequently reviewed the progress of the development project, and during those meetings he often noticed Jessica's unique approach to problem solving. Unlike many employees who simply followed instructions, Jessica asked thoughtful questions and offered practical solutions. Soon Daniel began inviting her to small design discussions where only senior architects were usually present. These meetings often extended late into the evening as they reviewed plans for parks, residential buildings, and commercial areas. Working side by side in the quiet office after most employees had gone home, they began talking about more than just architecture. Jessica spoke about her childhood by the harbor and her father's carpentry workshop, while Daniel shared stories about growing up in a powerful family where success was expected rather than celebrated. As the weeks passed, their conversations became more relaxed and personal. Jessica admired Daniel's intelligence and leadership, while Daniel found comfort in Jessica's sincerity and honesty, qualities that were rare in his world of corporate negotiations and ambitious executives. One evening, after finishing a long design review, they stood by the large office windows overlooking the bright city skyline. For a moment, neither of them spoke. The silence between them felt different, warmer and more meaningful than before. Though neither openly admitted it yet, something had quietly begun to grow between them, a connection that would soon change the course of both their lives. As months passed, Jessica became an important member of the design team at Coleman Developments. Her ideas continued to impress both the architects and investors involved in the company's projects. She was no longer the nervous newcomer who had arrived from a small coastal town. She had grown more confident and comfortable in the fast-moving world of the city. Daniel also noticed this change. Whenever meetings became tense or complicated, Jessica's calm reasoning often helped bring clarity to the discussion. Gradually, the professional respect between them deepened into something more personal. One evening, after the team completed a successful presentation for a major development project, Daniel invited Jessica to join him on the rooftop terrace of the company building to celebrate. The city lights stretched endlessly beneath them, glowing like a sea of stars. It was a peaceful moment far away from the busy streets below. They talked about their goals, their fears, and the unexpected paths their lives had taken. Daniel admitted that despite his success, he often felt trapped by the expectations placed upon him by his powerful family. Jessica listened quietly, offering the kind of understanding he rarely found in others. Her honesty and warmth made Daniel feel at ease in a way he had never experienced before. Standing under the soft glow of the city skyline, Daniel finally spoke the words he had been holding back for weeks. He told Jessica that meeting her had changed the way he looked at his own life. Jessica was surprised by his confession, but deep inside she realized she felt the same connection. Their relationship, which had begun with simple professional respect, had now grown into something genuine and emotional. That night, beneath the lights of the city, their bond became more than friendship. It became the beginning of a love that would soon draw them into a future neither of them could fully predict. As Daniel and Jessica's relationship grew stronger, it was only a matter of time before Jessica was introduced to the powerful Coleman family. One evening, Daniel invited her to dinner at the Coleman Mansion, a large estate located in one of the most prestigious neighborhoods in the city. The house itself was enormous, surrounded by tall gates, carefully designed gardens, and elegant stone pathways. For Jessica, who had grown up in a modest coastal home, the mansion felt almost overwhelming. Still, she reminded herself that she belonged there because of who she was, not because of where she came from. Inside the mansion, Jessica met Daniel's father, Richard Coleman, the founder of Coleman Developments and one of the most influential businessmen in the country. Richard was a serious and commanding man who had built his empire through decades of hard work and sharp decisions. Though he greeted Jessica politely, his eyes carefully studied her, as if measuring whether she truly belonged in his son's life. Also present was Daniel's stepmother, Margaret Coleman, a woman known in social circles for her elegance and intelligence. Margaret was charming on the surface, but her questions about Jessica's background felt unusually detailed and cautious. Throughout the dinner, Jessica remained respectful and composed, answering every question honestly. She spoke about her parents, her education, and her passion for architecture. Daniel, noticing the tension at the table, did his best to keep the conversation light. By the end of the evening, Richard simply nodded in approval without offering much opinion, while Margaret maintained a polite smile that revealed very little about what she truly thought. As Daniel drove Jessica home later that night, he reassured her that his family could be intimidating at first, but would eventually accept her. Jessica wanted to believe him. However, deep within the walls of the Coleman Mansion, doubts had already begun forming, doubts that would quietly influence the events yet to come. Months passed, and Jessica and Daniel's relationship became well known both inside the company and within the city's social circles. They were often seen attending corporate events, charity dinners, and development meetings together. Many people admired how different they were, Jessica with her quiet intelligence and thoughtful nature, and Daniel with his confident leadership and natural charm. Despite the pressures of Daniel's business world, they continued to support each other, growing closer with every passing day. One evening, Coleman Developments hosted a grand celebration at one of the city's most luxurious hotels to mark the completion of a successful development project. Business leaders, investors, and media representatives filled the elegant ballroom. Jessica attended the event expecting nothing more than another formal gathering. As the evening progressed, Daniel stepped onto the stage to thank the partners who had supported the project. The room fell silent as he spoke about the future of the company and the importance of building not only profitable structures but meaningful communities. Then, to Jessica's complete surprise, Daniel called her name. She walked toward the stage, confused but curious, while the crowd watched with interest. Daniel spoke warmly about how Jessica had influenced his vision for the company and how meeting her had changed his life in ways he never expected. Before anyone could fully understand what was happening, Daniel knelt down and revealed a small velvet box containing an engagement ring. The entire ballroom held its breath. Jessica, overwhelmed with emotion and surprise, felt her heart racing. After a brief moment of silence, she smiled and accepted his proposal. Applause filled the room as cameras captured the moment, marking the beginning of what many believed would become the city's most admired marriage. Not long after the engagement announcement, Coleman Developments began expanding several of its projects, bringing new employees and consultants into the company. Among them was Elena Brooks, a woman whose arrival immediately drew attention. Elena was elegant, confident, and highly intelligent. She had a reputation for being exceptionally skilled in corporate strategy and public relations. With her sharp sense of professionalism and striking presence, she quickly earned the respect of many executives within the company. Elena came from a very different background than most of the people she now worked with. She had grown up in a struggling neighborhood where opportunities were rare and competition was fierce. From a young age, she had learned that success often required determination, patience, and careful strategy. Unlike Jessica, whose life had been shaped by warmth and support, Elena had built her life through ambition and calculated choices. She believed that wealth and power were the strongest forms of security in a world that rarely showed mercy to the weak. When Elena first met Daniel Coleman during a company strategy meeting, she immediately recognized the influence and authority he held. As she observed the environment around him, she also noticed Jessica Elliott, Daniel's fiancée, who was now becoming widely respected for her role in several design projects. Though Elena greeted Jessica politely, something deep stirred behind her calm expression. Elena had spent years climbing toward the world of power and influence that the Coleman family represented. Seeing Jessica standing comfortably beside Daniel, admired and trusted by many, sparked a quiet but powerful determination within her. From that moment on, Elena Brooks began watching carefully, studying every detail of the relationship that seemed to place Jessica exactly where Elena believed she herself deserved to be. Elena Brooks quickly established herself as an important figure within Coleman Developments. Her intelligence and ability to manage complex corporate strategies impressed many executives. She handled negotiations with investors, organized major company events, and often worked closely with Daniel during high-level business meetings. Because of her professionalism and efficiency, Daniel trusted her judgment on several company matters. To most people in the office, Elena appeared loyal to the company and respectful toward everyone around her. However, Elena was also observant and patient. She paid close attention to the growing influence Jessica had within the company. Jessica's architectural designs were gaining recognition from investors and city officials, and many employees admired her honesty and dedication. While Elena maintained a friendly attitude toward Jessica, she quietly studied every interaction between Jessica and Daniel. She noticed how Daniel often relied on Jessica's opinions and how easily Jessica's ideas shaped important project decisions. To Elena, this influence represented a barrier standing between her and the powerful future she envisioned for herself. Slowly and carefully, Elena began planting small seeds of doubt in subtle ways. During private conversations with Daniel, she occasionally raised concerns about company priorities or suggested that emotional decisions could sometimes affect business judgment. She never mentioned Jessica directly, but her comments were carefully chosen to create uncertainty. At the same time, she arranged situations where Jessica and Daniel would disagree on certain project strategies, making the conversations more tense than before. None of these actions seemed serious on their own, but together they quietly began shifting the balance of trust. Without realizing it, the peaceful relationship Jessica and Daniel had built was slowly being tested by a manipulation that had only just begun. As months passed, the atmosphere between Daniel and Jessica slowly began to change. At first the differences were small, simple disagreements during project meetings or misunderstandings about work decisions. Jessica noticed that Daniel had become more serious and distant whenever business matters were discussed. The late-night conversations they once enjoyed while reviewing designs became less frequent. Daniel was spending more time attending corporate meetings and negotiations, many of which were organized by Elena Brooks, whose influence within the company was growing steadily. Jessica tried to remain patient, believing the tension was simply the result of Daniel's increasing responsibilities as the head of a powerful company. However, she could not ignore how frequently Elena appeared in Daniel's schedule. Elena was often present during meetings that Jessica used to attend, and Daniel seemed to rely heavily on her business advice. Whenever Jessica suggested alternative ideas for certain projects, Daniel sometimes responded with unexpected hesitation, as if questioning her judgment. Though he never spoke harshly to her, the warmth that once filled their conversations was slowly fading. Meanwhile, Elena continued her quiet strategy. She carefully positioned herself as someone Daniel could depend on during stressful business situations. Whenever conflicts arose between investors or project teams, Elena offered calm solutions that seemed to benefit the company. In private conversations, she occasionally hinted that personal relationships could complicate important business decisions. Daniel, already feeling the pressure of managing his father's powerful company, began taking these comments more seriously than he realized. Without openly confronting Jessica or recognizing the growing manipulation around him, Daniel allowed small doubts to settle in his mind. What had once been a strong and trusting marriage was now beginning to show the first visible cracks. The tension between Jessica and Daniel reached a turning point during an important company project that involved a major group of international investors. Coleman Developments was preparing to launch a large residential complex that would bring enormous profit and prestige to the company. Jessica had been responsible for designing the community layout for the project, combining modern apartments with public parks and green spaces. Her design had received early praise from city officials, and Daniel had once supported her vision completely. However, just days before the final presentation to investors, a serious problem suddenly appeared. Confidential project documents were leaked to a rival development company. The rival firm quickly announced a similar project proposal, raising suspicions within Coleman Developments about how such private information had been exposed. The situation created panic inside the company because the leak threatened both the company's reputation and its financial stability. During an emergency meeting with senior executives, Elena Brooks presented evidence suggesting that the files had been accessed from Jessica's company workstation. Jessica was shocked when the accusation was raised. She insisted that she had never shared confidential information with anyone outside the company. However, the digital records appeared convincing to the executives present in the room. Elena explained calmly that she had discovered the unusual file activity while reviewing internal security reports. Though Elena spoke in a professional and concerned tone, the evidence she presented created immediate suspicion around Jessica. Daniel sat silently as the information was revealed, his expression tense and troubled. The trust that had once been the foundation of their relationship was now being shaken by accusations he did not fully understand. As the meeting ended with uncertainty and doubt filling the room, the betrayal that Elena had carefully prepared was finally unfolding. The accusations against Jessica quickly spread throughout Coleman Developments. What had started as a confidential internal investigation soon became the center of discussion among executives and employees. Many people were confused and uncertain, remembering Jessica as someone dedicated and honest. However, the digital records that had been presented during the meeting seemed difficult to ignore. Investors began asking questions, and the company's reputation faced increasing pressure. Daniel, already overwhelmed by the situation, felt trapped between protecting his company and defending the woman he loved. Jessica tried desperately to explain that she had done nothing wrong. She asked for a deeper investigation and insisted that someone must have manipulated the records. But the more she tried to defend herself, the more the situation appeared complicated. Elena remained calm and professional throughout the investigation, offering to assist the security team in reviewing the company's systems. Her calm behavior made her appear trustworthy in the eyes of many executives. Meanwhile, Daniel struggled internally, unsure whether to trust the evidence in front of him or the woman he had once believed in completely. Eventually, under pressure from investors and senior board members, Daniel made a decision that would change both their lives forever. In a painful and emotional confrontation, he told Jessica that the company could no longer risk keeping her involved in its projects. His voice was heavy with disappointment and frustration as he asked her to leave the company and their home until the situation could be resolved. Jessica stood in silence, deeply hurt by the lack of trust in his words. With tears she tried to hold back, she gathered her belongings and walked away from the life she had built beside him. Daniel believed he was protecting his company from scandal, but in that moment he unknowingly drove away the woman who had once been the strongest part of his life. Leaving the city was one of the most difficult decisions Jessica had ever made. The life she had built with Daniel, the career she had worked so hard to develop, and the dreams she once believed in all seemed to collapse within a matter of days. With nowhere else to turn, Jessica quietly left the city and traveled to a distant town where no one knew her connection to Coleman Developments. She rented a small apartment and began searching for ways to rebuild her life. Though the pain of betrayal weighed heavily on her heart, she refused to allow it to define the rest of her future. Not long after arriving in the new town, Jessica discovered something that completely changed her perspective on everything that had happened. She learned that she was pregnant. The news shocked her at first, filling her with both fear and uncertainty. Daniel had already driven her away, believing she had betrayed him, and she knew there was no easy way to explain the truth to him now. Yet as the reality of the situation settled in, Jessica also felt a new sense of strength growing within her. She realized she was no longer alone, and the life she carried gave her a reason to move forward despite the pain she had endured. Determined to provide a stable future, Jessica began working with a small local design firm that specialized in community projects. Though the firm was much smaller than Coleman Developments, the work allowed her to focus on the type of architecture she had always believed in, building spaces that helped people live better lives. Months later, Jessica gave birth to twins, 2 healthy children who immediately became the center of her world. Holding them for the first time, she silently promised that she would build a future strong enough to protect them from the struggles she had faced. While the city she once called home continued without her, Jessica Elliott was quietly beginning a completely new chapter of her life. Life in the new town slowly brought stability to Jessica's world. The days were no longer filled with the pressure of corporate meetings or the painful memories of the life she had left behind. Instead, her focus became her twins and the quiet work she continued doing with the small architectural firm that had welcomed her. The firm specialized in practical community projects, schools, small housing developments, parks, and local businesses. Though the projects were modest compared to the massive developments she once worked on in the city, Jessica found a deeper meaning in the work she was doing. Raising twins on her own was not easy, but Jessica approached the challenge with the same determination she had always carried. Her children quickly became the source of her strength and motivation. She spent her mornings working on architectural plans and her evenings caring for them, making sure they grew up in a home filled with warmth and encouragement just as she had experienced during her childhood. The town's community slowly came to know Jessica as a hard-working architect and a devoted mother. Her reputation for honesty and creativity began spreading beyond the small firm where she worked. Over the next few years, Jessica's designs attracted attention from regional developers who admired her ability to combine practicality with beauty. Several successful projects followed, including community housing and urban parks that gained recognition in architectural circles. Without realizing it at first, Jessica was rebuilding something even stronger than what she had lost. Her confidence returned, her professional influence grew, and the quiet determination within her slowly transformed into something powerful. Though the past still lingered in her memories, Jessica Elliott was no longer the woman who had once been driven away. She was becoming someone far stronger, someone capable of shaping her own future, and eventually confronting the life she had left behind. 5 years passed, and the life Jessica had rebuilt was no longer fragile or uncertain. She had become a respected architect known for her innovative community-centered developments. The small design firm where she once started had grown into a successful regional company, largely because of the creative projects she had led. Her work had been featured in several architectural publications, and investors had begun seeking her expertise for larger urban projects. Jessica had transformed her quiet determination into a career built on skill, integrity, and vision. At home, her twins had grown into energetic and curious children who filled her life with joy and purpose. They shared Jessica's intelligence and kindness, always eager to learn and explore the world around them. Jessica carefully protected them from the painful parts of her past, choosing instead to focus on building a stable and loving environment for them. Still, as the years passed, she never forgot the truth behind the accusations that had forced her to leave the city. Deep inside, she knew that what had happened to her had not been an accident. Someone had carefully arranged the events that destroyed her life. One morning, Jessica received an invitation that stirred memories she had long kept buried. A large development consortium in the city was planning a major urban renewal project and had invited several successful architects to submit proposals. Among the companies involved in the project was Coleman Developments. Reading the name brought a quiet wave of emotions, memories of love, betrayal, and everything she had lost. But Jessica was no longer the same woman who had walked away 5 years earlier. With calm determination, she accepted the invitation. This time, she would return to the city not as someone seeking approval, but as someone strong enough to face the past and reclaim the truth that had once been taken from her. The city skyline looked just as Jessica remembered it when she arrived with her twins. Tall glass towers reflected the morning sunlight, and the busy streets below were filled with people rushing to begin their day. 5 years earlier, she had left this place with heartbreak and uncertainty. Now she returned with confidence and purpose. Her children walked beside her, curious about the large buildings and lively atmosphere around them. For them, the city was simply a new place to explore. For Jessica, it was the place where everything had once fallen apart. News of Jessica Elliott's participation in the urban renewal project quickly spread through the professional circles of the city. Many architects and investors were surprised to see her name among the selected candidates. Over the past few years, her growing reputation had quietly reached even the largest development companies. Her designs had gained recognition for their practicality, creativity, and ability to improve communities. When the planning committee reviewed her proposal for the new project, they were impressed by how carefully it balanced modern development with public spaces that benefited residents. At Coleman Developments, Danielle Coleman first learned about Jessica's return during a meeting with the project committee. When her name appeared on the list of competing architects, the room suddenly felt quieter to him. For a moment, he simply stared at the document, unsure whether what he was seeing was real. 5 years had passed since the day he had asked her to leave, and he had never expected to hear her name again in his professional world. Yet now she had returned not as someone seeking forgiveness, but as a respected architect competing for one of the city's most important development projects. Daniel realized that the past he believed was behind him was suddenly standing right in front of him once again. Jessica attended the first project meeting with calm confidence. The large conference hall was filled with developers, architects, investors, and city officials discussing the future of the urban renewal project. Many people recognized her from recent architectural publications, and several greeted her respectfully. Jessica maintained a professional attitude, focusing on presenting her proposal with clarity and precision. Her design included residential spaces, green parks, cultural centers, and affordable housing areas that would allow the community to grow sustainably. The presentation impressed many members of the planning committee, placing her among the strongest candidates for the project. Daniel sat across the room during the meeting, listening carefully as Jessica spoke. She looked different from the woman he remembered years ago. There was a quiet strength in the way she carried herself, a confidence that came from experience and independence. While other architects focused on luxury developments and profits, Jessica's ideas once again centered on creating spaces that improved everyday life for people. Daniel could not ignore how familiar her passion sounded. It reminded him of the early days when they had first worked together, before everything had gone wrong. Meanwhile, Jessica had her own quiet purpose for returning. Although the project provided a valuable opportunity for her career, she had also come back to understand the truth behind the accusations that had destroyed her life years earlier. During her time away, she had carefully studied the events surrounding the document leak that had been used against her. Certain details never made sense to her, and she suspected that someone inside the company had manipulated the situation. Now that she was back in the city, she began observing the company and the people involved, determined to uncover what had truly happened. Jessica Elliott had returned not only to rebuild her place in the city, but also to reveal the truth that had once been hidden. As the urban renewal project progressed, Jessica spent more time attending meetings and reviewing documents related to the companies involved. While maintaining her professional responsibilities, she quietly examined details connected to the old incident that had forced her out of Coleman Developments. Certain records from that time had always seemed unusual to her, especially the digital evidence that had been used to accuse her of leaking confidential files. With her growing connections in the city's architectural and business community, Jessica slowly gained access to people who understood the company's internal systems. During one of her investigations, Jessica met an independent cybersecurity consultant named Victor Hayes, who had previously worked with several large corporations. After carefully explaining the situation from 5 years earlier, she asked if it was possible for digital records to be manipulated in a way that falsely blamed someone else. Victor reviewed the limited information Jessica still had and quickly pointed out several irregularities. According to him, the activity logs used to accuse her could have easily been altered by someone with internal administrative access to the company's network. This discovery strengthened Jessica's suspicions that the evidence against her had been deliberately arranged. As Victor continued examining the records, he noticed that the security review during that time had been conducted by a department closely connected to corporate management. One name appeared repeatedly in the investigation reports: Elena Brooks. The same woman who had calmly presented the accusations during the meeting 5 years earlier had also been deeply involved in the internal review that followed. Jessica now had the first clear sign that the betrayal had not been an accident. The truth she had been searching for was finally beginning to surface, and the carefully built deception that had once destroyed her life was slowly unraveling. As more information surfaced, Jessica carefully gathered the evidence Victor Hayes helped uncover. The digital records clearly showed signs of manipulation that could only have been done by someone with high-level access to the company's internal systems. The investigation pointed directly toward actions taken during the time Elena Brooks had supervised the company's security review. Jessica knew that revealing the truth would not only clear her name, but would also expose the deception that had been hidden for years. However, she understood that the situation needed to be handled carefully to ensure the facts could not be dismissed or ignored. The opportunity came during a formal presentation held by the Urban Renewal Committee, where several development companies, including Coleman Developments, gathered to discuss the final project decisions. Jessica presented her architectural proposal with confidence, earning strong approval from the committee members. After her presentation, she calmly addressed a matter that had remained unresolved for years. With the support of Victor's technical report and verified digital records, she explained how the original evidence used against her had been altered. The room quickly filled with tension as the documents revealed that the internal investigation had been influenced by false information. Daniel listened in complete silence as the truth unfolded in front of him. For years he had believed that Jessica had betrayed both him and the company. Now he realized that the evidence he trusted had been manipulated. Elena Brooks, whose reputation within the company had grown during those 5 years, could no longer deny the details presented before the committee. Her carefully built position began to collapse as the investigation expanded beyond the meeting room. The deception that had once driven Jessica away was finally exposed, bringing an end to the false narrative that had shaped so many lives. For Daniel, the realization was painful, but it also opened the door to understanding the mistake that had changed everything. The revelation of the truth created a powerful ripple throughout the city's business community. Once the evidence was carefully reviewed, it became impossible to ignore the manipulation that had taken place years earlier. Elena Brooks' actions were investigated thoroughly, and her influence within Coleman Developments quickly collapsed. The professional reputation she had carefully built over the years was lost as the company and its partners distanced themselves from the deception that had been uncovered. For Jessica, the moment was not about humiliation or revenge, it was about finally restoring the truth that had once been taken from her. Daniel Coleman struggled with the weight of his past decisions. The realization that he had trusted false evidence and driven away the woman he once loved stayed heavily on his mind. He approached Jessica privately after the final committee meeting, hoping to speak with her honestly. When they met again, their conversation was calm but emotional. Daniel admitted that his lack of trust had caused irreversible damage and that he deeply regretted the pain his actions had caused. Jessica listened quietly, acknowledging his words without anger. 5 years had changed her in many ways. The woman standing before him was no longer defined by the mistakes of the past. Jessica's greatest focus was now her future and the life she had built with her twins. The city project eventually moved forward with strong support for her architectural design, marking another major achievement in her career. As she walked through the city streets with her children one evening, she reflected on the journey that had brought her back to this place. The pain of the past had shaped her strength, but it no longer controlled her future. Instead of seeking revenge, Jessica chose something far more powerful, moving forward with dignity, success, and the promise of new beginnings for herself and the family she loved. And that brings us to the end of today's story. The world of luxury often hides stories deeper than what meets the eye. If you enjoyed this story, be sure to like, share, and subscribe for more captivating stories on luxury jewelry stories. Until our next story, take care and stay tuned for more.